23rd of November, Rabbi Furst Pierke Avos, Hanukah.
Oh.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. How is everyone? How are you? How are you?
Good morning, Rabbi Furst. Good
How
morning.
is it? Lou?
Rabbi, first, I have a off-topic question for you after class.
After class. Okay, fine. No problem. Trying to help you. Okay, good morning again. This is Rabbi Shmuel. Zoom. We're learning now Hanukkah in what might be an unusual concept for some people. Many people, in fact, and as we'll go right into in a moment, that according to the Chasam Sofer, Purim and Hanukkah, the essence of Purim and Hanukkah is a mitzvah d'oraisa, and even more than that, as we're in the middle now of Rav Sadia Gaon, in fact, actually even counts Purim and Hanukkah in the target mitzvah, 613 mitzvahs. So we'll see how we what we can understand about that. If you give me a moment, I'll put it on the screen where we are on our sheet. Should be coming up in a moment there for you. We're in number 10. On your document there, you have the numbering, the paragraph number 10. And this is when it refers to Divri Goyin, that's referring to the Rav Sadia Goyin. Rav Sadia Goyin, as we saw, I mentioned, he includes in the listing of the 613 mitzvahs, Hanukkah and Purim. So part of what we have to try and understand is how Hanukkah and Purim considered to be mitzvahs d'oraisa. And hopefully we'll get a little bit of understanding about that. So as I said, we're in paragraph number 10. Any volunteers to read this morning to begin with?
I do.
Okay, go ahead, Lou, if you like.
Okay. V'amnam yesh kan makom ayon.
Ian, meaning there is to ponder, to contemplate.
Ponder. Okay, so there is that which to ponder. B'divrei Hagaon Zal, in the words of the sages. In the words of the sages.
No, Gaon, Sadia Gaon.
Zal, right? Divri Hagon Zal, the words of the Gaon, meaning Rav Sadia Gaon, Zochrono Livracha.
Sadia Hagon, Zichron Livracha. The Lifnei Hanera Midvarav Khan Shmona
Shemana, that the Fianira, at first glance, from his words, Khan Shemana, that he listed. He listed.
He listed the Megillah, V'ner Hanukah, b'minyan,
Right, exactly.
Targum.
Taryag.
He listed Megillah and Ner Hanukkah in the counting of the 613 mitzvahs.
Azil b'shitas habal halachos Gedolos. And he went with the view of
Bahag. It's the name of the sefer. Bahag.
Baal Halachas Gedolos. That's as Rabbi Lezer Tzvi, that's a sefer. Quite an old sefer, as a matter of fact.
Visayiso Zal.
Vesiatos and his supporters. And Sayat is someone who is a helper. The Siyato, so usually many times you see this type of an expression in the poskim. So he's going in the sheet of the opinion of Baal Hilkus Gedolos Vesiato, the opinion of the Baal Hilkus Gedolos and his supporters or his followers, if you like.
Bizeh Lemanos Gam Mitzvos Dirabanan B'minyan Tariag Mitzvos. In this, they also counted the mitzvah as the rabbinic mitzvah.
Right. Mitzvahs Taryag, meaning there are those, meaning the Baal Hilchos Gedolos and his supporters, there's everyone knows that there are 613 mitzvahs d'oraisa, correct? Right? Now,
Right.
first of all, you should know there are many more mitzvahs d'oraisa than just those 613. Okay? Many more than that. However, there's a special, unique listing of 613 mitzvahs. Lahavdil, I mean, just to give you an idea, what is similar to what it is a bit. Lahavdil, you have baseball, right? There are many baseball players, right? But there are only a certain number that are made into the Hall of Fame. Okay, there's a certain amount of specific baseball players that made it into the Hall of Fame, but there have been thousands and thousands of baseball players since the invention of baseball in who knows 18 something, whatever it might have been, right? So lahavdil, by mitzvahs you have many mitzvahs which are d'oraisa, but there is a special quality, a special criteria which puts 613 mitzvahs into a specific category by themselves. Okay, and there's a machlokus rishonim. Basically, I would say maybe 600 of those mitzvahs everyone agrees to. There are these basic 100. There might be 10, 12, 13 mitzvahs which there is a difference of opinion as to which ones are considered to be in the Taryag mitzvahs, the 613 mitzvahs or not. And because they're different, the Rishonim have different criteria by which they judge mitzvahs in terms of the mitzvah. For example, let me give you an example. There are some Rishonim that include Birker Cholim in the Taryag mitzvahs, right? Or the mitzvah tzedakah in the Taryag mitzvahs as an independent mitzvah d'oraisa. There are those that do not include, say, Birker Cholim in the 613 mitzvahs. Everyone agrees that Birker Cholim is a mitzvah d'oraisa, but it doesn't meet, according to some Rishonim, the criteria of being listed as one of the 16 mitzvahs, because it's a generalized mitzvah. Again, the Rishonim, they have a discrepancy among themselves as to what criteria you actually use to elevate a particular mitzvah d'oraisa into one of these 613 mitzvahs. So the Hilkus Gedolos, he includes mitzvahs d'Rabbanan in his listing of the 613 mitzvahs. Okay, so you might think at this point that Rav Sadia Gaon is also going in that opinion, and therefore there's no question at all why he counts Ner Hanukah and the Megillah as one of the 613 mitzvahs d'oraisa, because even mitzvahs d'Rabbanan are included in mitzvahs d'Oraisa. Okay, so that's the first point that he mentions over here. Okay.
Okay. The imkain yesh litmo amai lo mana. Therefore, there is to
A wonder. To me, it's a wonder.
it is a wonder why not count Gamkain also mitzvos ner Shabbos of the candles of Shabbos v'sha'ar mitzvos de Rabbanan and other rabbinic mitzvos Shemanu Habal Halachos Gedolos Visayaso
V'siyato, and his supporters.
and its supporters. So why not also count the candles of Shabbos and other rabbinic mitzvahs of the Bahag in the Bahag,
Right.
and its supporters.
Right.
So in other words, if he's going to count Hanukah, why not count these other ones?
Right. Right.
Is it possible to say that all of these supposedly extra ones, aren't they subcategories of mitzvos?
Exactly. Very good. That's why some Rishonim don't include these mitzvahs at all, because for example, we know keeping Shabbos, Zocher v'Shomer. There's a mitzvah Zocher of Shabbos and Shomer Shabbos, right?
Right.
So lighting near Hanukah, lighting near Shabbos, for example, could very well be understood as being a
Zacher.
fulfillment of that mitzvah Zocher es Yom Shabbos l'Kadshay, right? So, but it doesn't take on an independent status of being a separate 613 mitzvah, because it's under the umbrella of general Shabbos mitzvahs, right? But again, so that's where you have this machlokas amongst the Rishonim. Some of them use that criteria, and some of them don't use that criteria for various different reasons. But you're right, and there are those that learn it that way. That's right.
In other words, you could take all of the mitzvos, and you could take the Aseres Adibros, and make and have everything else would be a subcategory of those 10.
Well, that's exactly what Reb Saadia Gaon did. If you remember, there's a Rashi, right?
Right.
Rashi brings down Reb Saadia. This is the same Reb Saadia Gaon that we're learning here about Hanukah and Purim, and he actually did that, right? But what he did do as well, he also included Ner Hanukah and the Megillah as part of his listing of 613 mitzvahs d'oraisa, which is what we're trying to understand. How can you do such a thing like that, right? So we're in the middle of various different comments on the general listing of the Taryag mitzvah. So we should be able to get an idea of what actually makes up a 613 mitzvah. What makes up that, so to speak, that fame, Hall of Fame of mitzvahs, right? Those Hall of Fame mitzvahs, those 613 Hall of Famers, lahavdil. What makes up that? And according to we have to try and understand what it means according to Reb Saadia Gaon, because Reb Saadia Gaon is putting Ner Hanukah and Megillah into that category of those 613.
Mhm.
The al korcha
So what does he do? What does he eliminate?
Okay.
In other words, if everybody has, if it's all agreed to be 613, so everybody, if you're including Hanukkah, you have to take something out,
Sure. So again,
right? Is that correct?
100%. That is right. That is right. So again, it depends what kind of umbrellas you use. Like for example, you have a mitzvah of deraisa birka cholim. You have a mitzvah deraisa of levias esames. You have a mitzvah deraisa of tzedakah, right? So all these
Right.
mitzvahs could be under one
Right.
particular mitzvah of gemilas chasadim, right? Doing kind acts. Right, so they could all, instead of being specific mitzvahs, they could be included in an umbrella mitzvah of a more general type of category. So that's what the Rishonim and the Gardenim set out to do. Each one having some different categorizations and criteria, but they all agree that there's a special 613 numeral count of specific mitzvahs. Nevertheless, right, they still have different ways of criteria to apply to come up with that specific listing. So Rav Sadia Gaon, he's being unique in a certain way that he's including Ner Hanukah and the Megillah in that listing as well. So that's what we want to try and understand. In what way does he understand that these are mitzvahs deraisa?
the al korcha min ha Torah lav doka
Dafka, lav dafka, not exact.
lav dafka.
So according to this one commentary, they want to say when you want to say that Rav Sadia Gaon lists Hanukkah and Purim under the mitzvah of Minotaur, you have to say it doesn't exactly mean Minotaur. But so some want to deflect the pashut meaning, the basic meaning of what he says, and that's one way of approaching it. Then let's go to paragraph 11.
Ulechein nir'eh li b'das Rabbeinu HaGaon Zal
Vadai.
Devadai Salkalan
Spherale.
Spherale
He is of the opinion.
de Kriyas Halal
Hallel.
Hu Midraisa. So therefore, it seems to me, and the opinion of the rabbis.
Well, this is Rav Sadia Gaon. This is reference again to Rav Sadia Gaon.
The opinion of Rav Sadia Gaon is certainly the opinion. It is his opinion that the reading of the Hallel is deraisa. Eliezer, it's when you do that, it's very noisy.
Okay.
So if we want to discount the specific mitzvah of Kriyas Megillah and the specific mitzvah of Ner Hanukah, so we could come up with another explanation as presenting here, that it could be that what Rav Sadia Gaon meant when he said that Megillah and Ner Hanukah are deraisa, he was not referring to the actual Megillah and the actual lighting of the menorah, but he was referring to the Hallel. He was referring to the Hallel of Hanukah, or the Megillah, which is in place of the Hallel on Purim. So now we've come to a point, we've come to another step where the opinion is being presented now that Hallel of Hanukah is going to be Doraisa. So,
But that addresses the Purim issue because we know we read Megillah instead of saying Hallel. But on Hanukkah, we light candles and say Hallel. So we haven't addressed the issue of near Hanukkah.
right, so this is going to be if you now say that understand the mentioning when Rav Sadi don't mention near Hanukkah, he didn't make, you have to say he didn't mean actually the lighting of the Ner Hanukkah is the Doraisa, but meaning the Hallel, which is the other part of our observation of Hanukkah, that's the Doraisa that he was referring to. And why did he mention Ner Hanukkah? Because to mention Hallel, that would have been another indication of something else. So therefore, he wanted to mention something because Hallel can refer to the Hallel we say on Rosh Chodesh, the Hallel with they perhaps mention on Yom Tovim as well. So he wanted to mention perhaps specifically something which would indicate that he's talking about Hanukkah.
When we use the term Dioraisa, in its basic meaning, doesn't that mean that you have to establish that in the Torah itself, that Torah Moshe, that there is a mention of it?
There is a
Isn't that
mitzvah.
necessary?
There is a mitzvah to obey the words of the rabbis. That is generally held to be one of the Taryag mitzvahs.
That's called midrabanan. That's midrabanan. We have that. But the
Well, that's the question.
Dioraisa.
Now, what the rabbis told us to do is rabbinical. But the fact that the rabbis have
Right.
the power to tell us what to do, that's Doraisa, according to many Rishonim. That's
Correct.
Doraisa. Okay. So
But do they have the power to make something? Do they have the power to make something midioraisa if it's not mentioned? You can't find it mentioned in the Torah or a derivative or something. I mean, there's no mention of Hanukkah in the Torah. There's no mention of Purim. These were events that happened long afterwards.
No, but maybe what Rav Sadi is saying.
What is the term?
go ahead, Barry. Yeah, go ahead.
What does the term midioraisa mean if it doesn't mean from the Torah?
Exactly. So that's exactly part of what we're trying to understand here, right? That if you take a look at the very top. At the very top, we quoted the beginning of the document, paragraph number 2 in your paragraphation there. We quote the Chasam Sofer, right? The Chasam Sofer, right? So if you want, we can just read. It's worthwhile at this point, right? That we just review the Chasam Sofer, because again, the Chasam Sofer lived 200 years ago, so he had seen everything. We are building from the very beginning, from the foundation and going upward. Chasam Sofer knew all that, and see how he writes about this general topic. Lou, you want to review for us the second paragraph there?
Kivias Yom Moed Bayom Asisa Nes Hu Kol V'chomer Deoraisa. So the repair of
fixing. Kavias is fixing.
The fixing.
The establishment.
Oh, the establishment of the holiday on the day it occurred, on the day of the occurrence of the miracle, it is a kol v'chomer that it's derisa.
Okay, so let this statement sink in for a moment. Chasam Sofer is saying, and this is not only for the community, for the Jewish people, but also for a yachid. If an individual had a certain miracle take place for him, right? Let's say he was on the 76th floor of the the World Trade Center at the time of the attack, and the building collapsed, and he lived through it, through the collapse of the building, right? Obviously through miracles, right? So that day, right? What is it? 7/11, 11/7, 11/7. That day, he is midoraisa. The Torah commands him to make that day a permanent holiday for his rest of his life, and it could be even for the lives of his children, because if he wouldn't live, he may not have, the children that came after that miracle would not be alive either. So it could be that the children also have an obligation to keep that date as a permanent holiday
Right.
for their family, and that's doraisa. That is doraisa. A person has a miracle done for him. He has a obligation midoraisa to thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu in a specific way. As you'll see, we'll continue on. Let's see, he explains.
But you can't, okay. You can't
well-
make a personal holiday midiraisa. You can't call a personal holiday midiraisa. You
Well,
can't count it as
why?
one of the 613.
It's connected to the one that it's connected to the 613. If you look at the 613 mitzvahs, you can look, imagine a tree that it has 613 branches, right? 613 branches.
Right.
But each one of those branches may have leaves and twigs coming out of them as well, and all those things are also derisa.
Twigs,
Yeah, there's
twigs.
twigs
They have
coming out.
twigs.
Right, but the twigs are also derisa. The twigs are also part of the branch. It's not something completely unique for
But it's
example.
not a
Rabbanim.
branch.
But you have to wash your hands before you wash for a motzi. You have to wash, and that's something Shlomo Melech instituted, right? We have erev tavshilin. That's something that the Rabbanim instituted, right? Those things are completely outside the realm of the 13 mitzvahs of the Torah. There's something, they're unique. Let's put it like this: they're unique inventions. Unique inventions. They're not part of the tree. They're separate from the tree. But there are many things that we do that are part of the tree. They're connected to the basic 613 branches of the tree of the Torah. So that's how you can call it doraisa.
I hear.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Lefini is daiti, in my humble opinion.
In my humble opinion, Lefi Zeh Yom Purim v'Yemei Chanukah Daraisa.
Hey,
Haim. In my humble opinion, because of this, the day of Purim and the days of Hanukkah are Daraisa. Now, when he says because of this, he's talking about the Kol V'Chomer.
right, exactly.
But I didn't really get what the Kol V'Chomer is.
Oh, so
There's a
that,
miracle happened to, if a miracle happened to an individual, you have to establish a holiday. Certainly when a miracle happened to Klal Yisrael as a whole, you have to establish a holiday.
Okay.
we're gonna go into this. We'll elaborate on this point a little as we go further on. Hopefully this point will become more clear.
Okay. And so this idea that you have to establish a holiday if a miracle occurred to you, where is that coming from?
Okay, that where I didn't want to go into that particular point and where the source for that is, but let's leave that as a side question for the time being. Okay.
Okay.
Let's just accept that as a basic assumption for right now.
Okay. So so that means that it could be that I have a different 613 than you have.
Well, I mean, you might express it differently. That's true. Correct. Right. If you have a
For me, 9/11 is a holiday. For you, it's is a derisa holiday. For you, it's not.
Right, correct. That's right.
Okay. Af ma la'asos bahem im lishloach menoach o lehadlik neros o la'asos zecher achar zehu dirabanan. So even the doing of the doing on them of sending gifts or lighting the candles or the doing of the remembrance of other things is rabbinic.
Right, meaning the actual way you express Purim and Hanukkah, those things are rabbinical, because they are telling us how we should fulfill our obligation d'oraisa in keeping Hanukkah and Purim. They decree to us the ways we fulfill those mitzvahs.
So
But
we
our
have a
basic-
derisa mitzvah to keep Hanukkah
Right,
and a rabbinic mitzvah to light candles on Hanukkah.
right, because that's the specific way that was decreed to us rabbinically how to observe Hanukkah.
I hear that. That's good.
V'ha'over ve'eno oseh shum zecher liyamei Chanukah. And it's a violation if someone doesn't do anything in remembrance of the days of Hanukkah.
Overall mitzvah say deraisa, that if a person will, if a person on Hanukkah or Purim will not do anything, he will not do anything to commemorate neither Hanukkah or Purim, right? He is over mitzvah say deraisa. He is effectively committing a transgression by not fulfilling the mitzvahs of Hanukkah and not fulfilling the mitzvahs of Purim.
But does it require the actual performance?
But there has to
of-
be a pasuk.
Go ahead, let's read. Go ahead.
Does it require the actual performance of, say, for instance, lighting the candles, or could it be something like, I'm eating sufganiyot l'zecher, l'kavod Hanukkah?
Oh, so that's what he says in the next line and a half. Take a look at the next line. He explains this fully in the next line and a half. Yeah, Barry.
But if you want to say that not observing Purim or Hanukkah is over a midiraisa, you have to have a pasuk for that.
Oh, so
Right?
again,
There has to be a pasuk that you're over
so okay, so you're right. So exactly
in the
so
Torah, right?
In paragraph number 3, if you want, we'll review it again and we'll look at paragraph number 3. In paragraph number 3, he explains his point. Hold on. Let's finish paragraph number 2 and then we'll go to paragraph number 3.
But even without paragraph number 3, don't we have an answer to Barry's question from the first sentence that I'd read in paragraph 2 that established the kol v'chomer?
Well, okay, so paragraph 3 is actually going to be the expression of the Kal V'chomer.
It'll elaborate.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So the answer is that you can derive it from a kol v'chomer without a pasuk.
Right. So and again, if it's something which is a Kal V'chomer, in essence, you don't really need a pasuk, because something which is basic logic, right? Basic logic is also doraisa. That's what Chazal mean, svara lameli kra. There's a phrase in the Gemara, svara, logic, lameli kra, meaning sometimes the Gemara will use it as a question, meaning sometimes there'll be a statement made in the Gemara, and they'll cite a pasuk, and there'll be an attack on that position, because they'll say, "Swara, this is logic. I don't need a pasuk." If it's logical, that's also doraisa. Meaning that's the whole basis of the Sefer Havas HaLevavos, right? The Sefer Havas HaLevavos was written a good 800 years ago, and the whole basis of the Sefer Havas HaLevavos was to prove that there are many, many more mitzvahs in the Torah which are considered to be mitzvahs d'oraisa that are not listed specifically in the Torah itself. Nevertheless, they're called, but that's what the Sefer is named by, Havas HaLevavos, the obligations of the heart. What does it mean, the obligations of the heart? Right? Obligations of the heart are those things which your human, basic human intellect tells you must do. Right? Meaning, if a person does something, a kind act to you, your appreciation, your hakaras hatov is the right thing. You must have a hakaras hatov to a person that does something, that does a kind act to you. That you don't have to tell you, and that doesn't have to be a specific, thou shalt have appreciation for people who do good deeds to you. You don't have to be told that in the Torah. That's something any normal human being, intellectual human being should be able to figure out. That is Kadosh Baruch Hu created every human being with enough intelligence that he should realize that that's a basic Torah law, without a pasuk, because that's something which everyone with normal intelligence should be able to figure out for themselves, unless they've been tainted or submerged in gullus so long that they don't realize these things. Right? That's another story. But many things are deraisa. That, as I said, is the whole basis of the Sefer Havas HaLevavos. That. And I said that was a good, maybe that could be almost, a good, about a good, almost 1,000 years ago. He lived almost 1,000 years ago. Yeah.
That's wild, Rabbi. And anything, you can just say, oh, well, it's logical, therefore it's derisa?
Yes, that's one of the meanings of it. Says Derech Eretz Kadmon LaTorah. That's one of the basic meanings of when Chazal say Derech Eretz is Kadmon LaTorah, meaning Derech Eretz, meaning Seichel, human intelligence precedes the Torah. Meaning you don't need it's a foundation to the Torah. It's pre-Torah. It's so basic, right, that it doesn't have to be said in the Torah. The Sefer Shari Kedusha, Rav Chaim Vital, the Talmud Muvak of the Arizal, asked a question. He says, why don't we see that Shviras Hamidos, that a person should change his character traits, his personality, that a person should change his talent? Why don't we see that the Torah commands that? That's this question. Why don't we see that the Torah commands that a person change his character, right? The answer he gives is it's so basic that the whole basis of Torah is built upon this premise. It's something which is so basic that you don't have to say that in the Torah. That whole basis of the Torah is based upon this. So you see, man, that's what the meaning of the words. One understanding of the meanings of the words Derech Eretz Kadmon LaTorah, that basic human intelligence obligates you even before the Torah comes along to obligate you.
And I thought that when we got the Aseret Dibros, when Moshe brought the Torah down, this was I always thought this was a statement, the opposite of that. It was saying, look, all of the beliefs and all of the traditions and all the even all the good, apparently good things that other civilizations are doing, forget that. This is it now. This is I'm giving you now what you need to serve me.
Right. So we have to realize something happened at the time when we came out of Mitzrayim. Okay, when we came out of Mitzrayim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us the Torah right? Which is a codified, distinct, specific insight into exactly what a Kadosh Baruch Hu expects from every Jewish person. Okay. Now, we didn't have such a need for such a thing like that beforehand, because there was no Klal Yisrael before that time. Before we came out of Mitzrayim, there was no Klal Yisrael. Once we had a Klal, meaning we were basically individuals, right? Individuals. We were maybe Shvatim, we were tribes, we were individuals, we were the Jewish people, but there wasn't a Klal Yisrael, a organism, a nation of the Jewish people. Right. So there was no need for this and to be codified in the way that we have in the Sefer Torah Bisman Hazeh. When Kadosh Baruch Hu brought us out of Mitzrayim and we went through all the experiences that were necessary to unify Klal Yisrael in the way that Hashem wanted to fuse the Jewish people forever and ever together as a one nation. So now we need a codified, specific way of conducting our lives according to the dictates of the Torah. And that was the Torah that was given to us at Har Sinai, both the Torah Shebiksav and the Torah Shebal Peh. Okay? So that's why we needed to have it at that point. But that doesn't mean that there were many other things that were not included in the written Torah. There were many things that were written, included in the Torah Shebal Peh, the verbal tradition, the oral tradition. And there are many things that still are considered to be, as we see, Chavos Levavos, the intellectual, the intelligent obligations that we have to have in and above those things. And the transition of Klal Yisrael from a people to a nation, that was why we need to have a specific codified Torah as we have it Bisman Hazeh. Right? But that doesn't limit anything that happened beforehand. However, the everything, and this, there's a lot of discussion about this, that for example, bris milah, right? The Jewish people from the time of Avraham Avinu were commanded in bris milah. If a person's going to give a bris milah to his child because he wants to fulfill the commandment that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave to Avraham Avinu to give circumcision to his offspring, he is not fulfilling the mitzvah d'oraisa Bisman Hazeh.
Right.
He has to have in mind that he's fulfilling the mitzvah of bris milah because it's commanded to us in the Torah,
Right.
not because of what Hashem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, said to Avraham Avinu.
Exactly. Exactly.
That was also all those mitzvahs that we had before, all those specific mitzvahs that we had before Matan Torah, they were all, so to speak, revised, right, in a new edition in the giving of the Torah at Har Sinai.
Right. Exactly. That's my point. That there might have been, great mitzvos and chesed, kindnesses and all this that were done before, but when we got the Torah, this was a whole new start.
Right.
Right. But I just want to mention one thing. I wanted to check with Rebbe about this. If you go through the Aseres Adibros in the Torah and you compare it to the 613 that are listed, and there are actually, according to the 613, there are actually 13 mitzvos in the Aseres Adibros.
Mm-hmm. Could be, right. I mean, because we call it the Aseres Adibros. The 10, the Dibros is actually the 10 utterances, but with
Right.
the word called the English translation of the commandments, but it's a misnomer to a certain
Right.
extent. Correct.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
So in the Aseres Adibros, there's actually not 10, but in the 10 utterances, there are 13 mitzvos.
Correct. Right. Very good.
If you go by, right, if you study it, so it just it takes a lot of careful analysis, like we're doing, to understand.
Sure. Exactly. Okay, let's go back to the text a minute for a moment.
Oh, yeah.
Let's see.
I wanted to
Yeah.
ask you a question about this idea of Derech Eretz Kavod Torah being derisa. Now I lost it. All right,
All right.
we'll go on.
All right,
Um,
it'll come back. I'm sure if it's a good question, the good questions usually come back.
Yeah. Write it down next time.
Acha oseh shum zecher yiyeh ma she yiyeh. Even to do something in remembrance that was, I don't know, what is this haya ma shehaya?
Like this. However, I mean, this Eliezer Tzvi, this is a response to your question a few moments ago.
Right.
However, someone will do something, some commemoration, whatever it may be. Whatever it may be. Meaning on Hanukkah, he's going to eat sufganiyot. He'll eat latkes. Why eating latkes? Because the miracle was made with oil, and latkes are very oily. Right? What about lighting the menorah? Nah, that's not for me. What about Hallel? That's not for me. Right? But latkes, look, my grandmother made good latkes, and that's Hanukkah. That's Hanukkah for me. Okay. So, however, always whatever, if a person will make some commemoration, whatever it may be, Al Kopanim, at least Yom Echad, at least for one day.
Miyamei Hanukah, of the days of Hanukkah, va'afilu lo hadlik neros, even if he doesn't light the candles, below shalach manoach, and he doesn't send
Manos, shlach manos.
Bapurim on Purim, uked duma, and similarly, Eino ella avarayin de Rabbanan. It's not a sin. It's not a rabbinic sin.
No,
It is. It's only rabbinic. It's only
Right.
rabbinic.
Right. He's only a rabbinical criminal. He's only
He's not over the derisa, only over the
Right.
rabbanan.
right. Meaning he's not. It's not a federal crime. It's only a state crime. Right.
So
It's
that
only
proves doesn't that prove that we can't make everything a midiraisa?
I'm not sure what you mean. What do you mean?
In other words, if we're saying now that that these errors are that we can't say they're midiraisa, they're midirabbanan errors, so that means that you're not able that we can't lump everything and say, well, it's that Chanukah is midiraisa.
No, because here he was talking about that he did something. He did something. One thing he did something. Right.
Yeah.
He did something.
Okay.
He put up a picture with a menorah on his front door. Okay, that's all he did. So midaraisa, he's yaitzi. Why? Because he's acknowledging that Hashem, in some way, he's acknowledging that Kadosh Baruch Hu did some kind of miracles for us, and he's acknowledging that that this is the time of year to acknowledge that. So you can't say he's not fulfilling his, at least in a minimal way, his obligation midaraisa. But midarabbanan, he's a criminal midarabbanan. Rabbinically, he's a criminal.
Well, I didn't know where I'd be when I saw.
I remember my question.
I figured I'd come
Okay,
in.
go ahead, Luke.
So Derech Eretz Kavod Torah. So I have a custom that when I say the bracha motzi and cut the bread and pass the bread out, so nobody eats until everybody has bread.
Okay.
That's a custom I got from Rabbi Avraham Chaim Lappin Zal. So I had an
Okay.
argument with a guest
But what
One
about a
time.
hefsek?
at my table
I mean, if you had a large
said
table.
that wasn't
you know,
the right thing to
it's Pesach
do.
and you got 20 people at your table,
And I said,
it'd be hefsek.
the reason it is the right thing to do is it's derech eretz kadmon l'Torah. That I'm not going to grab the bread and shove it in my mouth while a whole bunch of people don't have their bread yet. It's not proper behavior. And he said, "You got that from the goyim. That's not proper. That's not proper. It's a custom of the goyim."
Mm.
Right, okay, I mean, go ahead.
So, turning his argument around, I would say that by saying that you can use your common sense to establish a principle as being derisa opens you up to all kinds of possible mistakes. According to him, I was making a mistake by doing that.
Well, because in that case, if I'm not mistaken, there's a law in Shulchan Aruch that tells you not to do that. The botzeya, the one who breaks the bread, should eat first, right? But without going into the details of that at this particular point, but again, you have to when we're talking about derech eretz kadmon l'Torah, we're talking about a type of intelligence which has not been influenced by gullus. I mean, unfortunately, growing up where we grew up and how we grew up, we were highly influenced by gullus, by the non-Jewish surroundings that we're surrounded by. So therefore, our viewpoints, our hashkafas, are not clear in terms of what the Torah actually expects from us. We're not really using our intelligence in the proper way. So for us, that we can start applying this concept of derech eretz kadmon l'Torah, that has to be only if a person has remained pure in his education and influence from the media and such, that if he's influenced by education and the media and everything else, society, culture, so then it's very difficult to say that his intelligence is functioning in an unbiased way, right? And if the seichel, if the intelligence is functioning in a biased way, it's not going to be considered derisa, because it's not the bias changes the conclusions that the intelligence will reach. Well, I mean, that unfortunately is what you have all these splinter groups, conservative, reform, reconstructionists, and they simply are using their gut feelings as to what they seems to be appropriate for their religious services. I told you about how the reform group in Atlanta celebrated Rosh Hashanah. They had a meeting of their group in the Atlanta Zoo, right? And they had the tour of the zoo as their Rosh Hashanah celebration. And instead of Kriyas Torah, they read a book from Dr. Seuss.
Is this serious? Is this true story?
It's serious. It's very serious. It was written up in a Mishpacha magazine for Rosh Hashanah, and the one who wrote the article was Rav Feldman from the Kehillah there in Los Angeles. That's how they celebrated Rosh Hashanah.
So that's exactly my concern, that you've opened yourself up to a can of worms.
No,
Yeah.
so again, no, because you when we're talking about derech eretz or seichel, human intelligence, we're not talking about the intelligence of people who are influenced by bad things and have biases and different concepts that are not in keeping with the basics of the Torah. So once a person's been influenced by non-Jewish thought and culture and society, then they're out of that. That doesn't apply to them. Derech Eretz, there's no Derech Eretz at that point.
Hmm.
Anyway, that's a big independent discussion. That's the essence of Hanukkah. The Greeks were interested in doing that exactly. The Greeks were interested in us simply giving up all our beliefs. They were happy to have us to live and pay tribute to them as long as we gave up our beliefs, right? As long as we saw things the way they saw them, they would have no problems with us. But that represented death to us. That to give up our viewpoints, our Jewish hashkafas and philosophies, that represents death for us.
Would it be fair to say that the Romans were the opposite of the Greeks? That the Romans didn't care what we did as long as we paid our taxes and kept our heads down?
Yeah, to a certain extent, right? To a certain extent. I mean, they had their own problems, but they weren't interested in necessarily having us. Their decrees against us were simply because that was basically anti-Semitism. All right, let's call what the Romans were doing was anti-Semitism, because they had a hatred for the Jews. I don't know if the Greeks actually had a hatred for the Jews. They had a hatred for what we believe.
Well, I don't know. I guess the end result is still the same, though.
Yeah, yeah. When you when you look at the end result, there's not no real difference.
No, the end result is very, very different. I mean, Hanukkah is a civil war. It's the danger from the Greeks was the Hellenization of the Jews.
Right.
It was the Jews that were the Hellenized Jews were causing all the trouble. The Greeks were just their support system.
Right. And by Rome.
Whereas in Rome, the Romans wanted to subdue us. They weren't trying to create a civil war. They were trying to, like you said, make us pay our taxes and do as we were told.
Yeah,
Right.
well, that was basically the Tanoim, the Amoraim. They basically said that. They said to a certain extent they were willing. That it was the Boroyonim, the Tzedukim, the Pharisees, not the Pharisees, the others. I forgot the groups. But the ones that were causing the major trouble with the Romans were the splinter groups from the mainstream of Torah Judaism. Torah Judaism was basically, they would, as long as they let us sit and learn Torah and keep our mitzvahs. So what if we don't have rule over Eretz Yisrael, and what if we don't have control over our economy? We're more. What's our life? Our life is sitting and learning and doing mitzvahs. If we can placate the Romans by paying our tribute and behaving ourselves and not being rebellious, so fine and dandy, right? Let life go on, and sooner or later the Romans will pass from the scene, and when it's time to come back to, but to bring out a situation where they caused a rebellion to such an extent that the Romans felt necessary to destroy the base of Mikdash and exile the rest of Klal Yisrael from Eretz Yisrael. So that wasn't caused by Chazal. Chazal weren't in favor of that. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, we've gone over time, so we'll have to take a break here.
Take a break.
And we'll continue tomorrow, Mitzvah Hashem. Very good, but and it could be, maybe it's a whole separate discussion, the Derek Eretz Kadmon Torah in terms of this concept, but that's something we can put and maybe spend time on at one point or another. Okay, Roy should have a good afternoon. Mitzvah Shem, we'll be back soon and with the Shir and Mr. Brewer, and hopefully see you all soon, Mitzvah Shem.
Okay, Rabbi, first quick question.